The text message from Mom lit up my phone screen at exactly 2:47 a.m. Come home immediately. Your sister needs you. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas, my hands shaking with a familiar mixture of rage and resignation. My name is Adeline, and I've spent 25 years being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always comes running when called. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, I was celebrating landing my dream job, senior marketing director at one of New York's top agencies. Don't let her ruin this for you, Natasha said, sliding another glass of champagne across the table. We were the last ones left at the bar, our earlier celebration with colleagues having dwindled down to just us two. You've worked too hard for this. I took a long sip, letting the bubbles fizz against my tongue. You don't understand. Willow's probably having another crisis. Last time, it was because she couldn't decide which luxury apartment to rent with Dad's money. Before that, it was because her boyfriend dumped her for being too high maintenance. And your mother expects you to drop everything and fix it. Natasha's voice dripped with disapproval. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. I pulled up my mother's contact information, thumb hovering over the call button. Don't. Natasha grabbed my phone. At least wait until morning. But I knew better. The calls would keep coming, and Mom's voice would get increasingly desperate until I gave in. I dialed her number. Finally, Mom's voice crackled through the speaker. Where have you been? Your sister's company is downsizing, and she might lose her entry-level position. She's devastated. I pressed my fingers against my temple. Mom, it's the middle of the night. What do you expect me to do about it right now? You need to come home and help her find a new job. And while you're at it, she needs help with her apartment hunting. The lease is up next month, and you know how overwhelmed she gets with paperwork. Mom, I can't. I just accepted a position in New York. I start in 3 weeks. The silence on the other end was deafening. When she spoke again, her voice was ice cold. You're choosing a job over your family? It's not just a job, Mom. It's my career, my future. I've worked years for this opportunity. Your sister needs you here. Family comes first, Adeline. Always. She paused, and I could practically see her pursing her lips in disappointment. Besides, there are plenty of marketing jobs in Chicago. You can find something local. I caught Natasha's eye across the table. She was shaking her head vigorously. No, Mom. I'm not coming back. Not this time. Then you leave me no choice. Mum's voice hardened. Either you come home and help your sister, or you can consider yourself no longer part of this family. The words hit me like a physical blow. Are you seriously giving me an ultimatum? I'm being realistic. Your father and I have supported you through college, helped you with your first apartment, and this is how you repay us. By abandoning your sister when she needs you most. I wanted to scream, to remind her that I'd worked 3 jobs through college while Willow got a free ride, that I'd paid back every penny they'd helped me with, while my sister still lived off their credit cards at 22. Instead, I said quietly, I'll think about it, and hung up. Natasha reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You know what you have to do, right? I nodded slowly, a plan forming in my mind. I'm not going back, but I'm also not going to fight about it. What do you mean? I pulled out my laptop, the champagne forgotten. I'm booking a one-way ticket to New York for tomorrow. No arguments, no dramatic showdown. I'll leave them a letter explaining everything. Holy shit, Natasha whispered. You're really doing it. Watch me. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I booked the flight. 25 years of being the family doormat ends tonight. As I confirmed the purchase, my phone buzzed again. A text from Willow. Addie, please come home. I don't know what I'll do without you. For the first time in my life, I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new document and began typing. Dear Mom, Dad, and Willow. The words flowed easily now. Years of suppressed feelings finally finding their way onto the page. Tomorrow, they'd wake up to find me gone. Tomorrow, they'd finally have to face the consequences of their actions. Tomorrow, my new life would begin. But tonight, I had a letter to write. The sun hadn't risen yet when I finished the letter. My hands were trembling as I sealed the envelope, my entire life's frustrations condensed into 3 pages of brutal honesty. "Read it," I told Natasha, who'd stayed with me through the night. "Tell me if it's too harsh." She unfolded the pages and began reading aloud. "Dear Mom, Dad, and Willow, by the time you read this, I'll be on my way to New York. I know this isn't how you wanted things to go, but I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep others warm. Mom, you've always said family comes first, but you never meant the whole family, just Willow. When I worked 3 jobs in college, you called me selfish for not having time to help her with her homework. When I got my first promotion, you dismissed it because Willow was having boy troubles that apparently needed my immediate attention. Dad, your silence has been just as damaging as Mom's demands. You watched me struggle, watched me sacrifice everything for Willow, and never once stood up for me. Your passive acceptance of this dynamic made you complicit. And Willow, I love you, but you're 22 years old. It's time to grow up. Your problems aren't emergencies that require everyone else to drop their lives. Your inability to handle basic adult responsibilities isn't cute anymore. It's exhausting. I'm not doing this to hurt any of you. I'm doing this because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself. I've accepted the position in New York. I've signed a lease on an apartment. I'm starting fresh. Don't try to guilt me into coming back. Don't try to manipulate me with threats of cutting me off. I've been independent since I was 18. Nothing will change except that I'll finally be free to live my own life. If you want to have a relationship with me moving forward, it needs to be on equal terms. No more expectations that I'll drop everything for Willow. No more guilt trips. No more ultimatums. I hope someday you'll understand. Love, Adeline. Natasha looked up from the letter, her eyes wide. Holy shit, Adeline. This is perfect. I zipped up my suitcase, already packed with the essentials. Everything else would be shipped later. You don't think it's too much? It's exactly enough. She helped me carry my bags to her car. Are you sure you don't want me to drive you to the airport? No, I'll take an Uber. You've done more than enough staying up with me all night. The drive to my parents' house was surreal in the pre-dawn darkness. Natasha pulled up a block away, keeping the headlights off. I slipped out with the letter in hand. Our family home looked peaceful, almost mockingly so. The garden Mom meticulously maintained, the porch swing where Willow spent hours on her phone, Dad's perfectly washed car in the driveway, everything exactly as it had always been. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter where Mum would find it during her morning coffee routine. My hand lingered on the envelope for a moment before I forced myself to turn away. My phone vibrated. Another text from Willow. Addie? Why aren't you answering? Mum's really upset. I switched off my phone. The Uber was waiting when I returned to Natasha's car. She hugged me tight, whispering, You're doing the right thing. Call me when you land. At the airport, everything moved in a blur. Security, coffee, waiting at the gate. It wasn't until I was buckled into my seat that reality hit me full force. Would you like something to drink? The flight attendant's voice snapped me back to the present. Water, please. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. As the plane took off, I imagined Mum finding the letter. She'd be angry first, then hurt, then would immediately call Willow to comfort her. Dad would read it silently, perhaps feeling a twinge of guilt, but ultimately deferring to Mum's reaction. And Willow. I pictured her face crumpling as she realized her safety net was gone. Part of me ached for her, but a stronger part felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The city disappeared beneath the clouds, and with it, 25 years of being everyone's emotional support system. My phone stayed off in my bag, collecting missed calls and angry texts I wasn't ready to face. First time going to New York? The elderly woman next to me asked kindly. No, I replied, managing a small smile. But it is my first time going there to stay. As the sun finally broke over the horizon, painting the clouds in brilliant oranges and pinks, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Whatever happened next, Whatever storm I'd just unleashed, at least I was finally steering my own ship. The letter was written. The die was cast. There was no going back now. New York hit me like a wall of sound and color. 3 weeks into my new life, and I still couldn't believe I'd actually done it. My tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn was a far cry from my spacious room back home, but every square inch was mine. Earned with my own money, decorated to my own taste, and blessedly free of family drama. Adeline? Miguel, my new boss, poked his head into my office. Got a minute? I quickly minimized my email. 37 unread messages from Mum, 12 from Dad, and 63 from Willow. Of course, Miguel's office had a view of Manhattan that still took my breath away. He gestured for me to sit. The Johnson campaign presentation was fantastic. The client loved your fresh perspective. Thank you, But, he held up a hand. You seem distracted. Everything okay? I hesitated. Miguel had been nothing but supportive since I'd started, but I kept my personal life private at work. Just adjusting to the city. And avoiding calls from Chicago? He smiled knowingly. Your phone's been buzzing through meetings all week. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who did the same thing 20 years ago. He leaned back in his chair. Left Puerto Rico against my family's wishes. They didn't speak to me for 2 years. How did you handle it? By remembering why I left. Speaking of which, he slid a file across his desk. We're pitching to Nike next week. Want to lead? My heart jumped. Are you serious? That's huge. You've earned it. He gestured at my phone, which was buzzing again. Deal with whatever that is. Clear your head. Back in my office, I finally turned on my phone's sound. Immediately, a voicemail from Willow played. Addie, please. Her voice was thick with tears. I lost my job. They said I missed too many deadlines. Mom's making me move back home, but I can't. I can't go backward like this. I need your help. Please call me back. I pressed delete, but my hand was shaking. Another voicemail started. Adeline Gibson. Mum's voice was sharp. Your sister is falling apart, and you're playing career woman in New York. How dare you abandon your family like this? That letter was cruel and selfish. Call me back immediately. Delete. My phone rang. Natasha's face popped up on screen. Finally, a call I wanted to take. Your sister just showed up at my apartment, she said without preamble. What? Why? Looking for you, obviously. She's a mess, Adeline. Mascara everywhere, wearing pajama pants in public. She got fired for real this time. I sank into my chair. Not my problem anymore. I know, but... Natasha hesitated. She said she's been having panic attacks. Maybe we were too harsh. I wrote that letter alone. You know what I mean. I encouraged you, because you've watched me put my life on hold for them for years. I was almost shouting now. Did she mention why she got fired? The missed deadlines? The constant drama? No, but... Then let me tell you what happened. She spent more time on Instagram than working. She called in sick whenever she had a bad date. She expected everyone else to cover for her, just like she expected me to fix everything else in her life. A knock at my door made me jump. Miguel stood there, concern etched on his face. I lowered my voice. I have to go, Natasha. Just don't let her guilt you into giving her my address. What about your dad? She asked quickly. He's been asking about you too. Dad had 25 years to stand up for me. His guilt is not my responsibility either. I hung up and turned to Miguel. I'm sorry about that. He sat down across from me. You know, when I left home, I thought I was just running away. Took me years to realize I was actually running towards something better. Did your family ever understand? Eventually, but only after I stopped trying to make them understand. He tapped the Nike file. Sometimes the best revenge is success. My phone buzzed again. A text from Willow. Found out you're working at Marshall & Brooks. Guess family means nothing compared to a corner office, huh? I showed Miguel the message. She's trying to track me down. Want my advice? Focus on the Nike pitch. Pour everything into it. Success is the best boundary. It shows them you're thriving without them. I straightened my spine. You're right. Can I see the brief again? As I immersed myself in work, my phone kept buzzing with messages from home. But for the first time, the guilt was overshadowed by something stronger: determination. Let them panic. Let them feel what it's like to handle their own problems. I had a presentation to nail. The Nike pitch was a success, but I barely had time to celebrate before Natasha's urgent call came through. Your mum showed up at my workplace today, she said, her voice tight with anxiety. She's getting desperate, Adeline. I was walking home from the subway, the city's evening buzz surrounding me. What did she want? What do you think? She's trying to guilt me into revealing your address. But that's not the worst part. Natasha paused. Willow's really spiraling. She totaled her car last week. I stopped walking. What? Was she hurt? No, just her pride. And Dad's credit card. She was texting while driving. But here's the thing. Your parents refused to buy her a new one. Seriously? I leaned against a building, processing this. Mom and Dad actually said no to Willow. Apparently, they can't afford it. Your dad's business isn't doing well, and with Willow moving back home... My phone beeped. Another incoming call. Mom. I have to go, Natasha. Thanks for letting me know. I answered Mom's call, bracing myself. Hello? Finally. Her voice was different, less commanding, more strained. Adeline, we need to talk about what you've done to this family. What I've done? I laughed incredulously. I made a career choice, Mom. I'm not the one who gave ultimatums. Your sister is falling apart. She's had to move back home, she can't find a job, and now she's having anxiety attacks. Is that what you wanted? I clutched my phone tighter. What I wanted was to live my own life without being Willow's permanent backup plan. She's your sister, and I'm your daughter. My voice echoed off the buildings, turning heads of passing strangers. But you never worried about my anxiety, did you? When I was working 3 jobs in college, when I had to cancel my own plans constantly to rescue Willow. A long silence followed. When Mum spoke again, her voice was quieter. We need you to come home, just for a little while. Help her get back on her feet. No, Adeline, please, your father's business is struggling. We can't support her like we used to. So now that you can't enable her anymore, you want me to step in? I started walking again, faster now. That's not happening, Mum. You're being selfish. No, I'm being successful. I just landed the biggest account of my career. I have my own place, my own life. For the first time, I'm putting myself first, and it's working. Another silence. Then, your father wants to speak with you. Dad's voice came through, hesitant as always. Princess, we miss you. My steps faltered. Dad hadn't called me princess since I was little. Dad, I know we messed up. I know I should have done more, said more. Then why didn't you? It was easier not to rock the boat, but seeing what it's done to you, to all of us. He sighed heavily. Willow needs to learn to stand on her own feet. We see that now, but she doesn't know how. That's not my responsibility. No, it's ours. We failed both of you in different ways. His voice cracked. Just don't cut us off completely. Please. I reached my apartment building, fumbling for my keys. I need time, Dad. Space to build my own life without feeling guilty about it. I understand. But Adeline. Yes? I'm proud of you. For being strong enough to leave. For succeeding. I should have said that years ago. Tears pricked at my eyes. Thanks, Dad. After hanging up, I sat on my building stoop, letting the city noise wash over me. My phone buzzed with a text from Willow. Everyone's mad at me, and it's all your fault. I hate you. Minutes later, another. I'm sorry, I don't hate you. I just don't know how to do this without you. I started typing, deleted it, started again. Finally, you'll figure it out. You're stronger than you think. Then I turned off my phone and went upstairs to my apartment. On my desk, the Nike contract sat waiting for my signature. my first major client as lead director. Next to it was a framed photo Natasha had taken the night before I left, my face glowing with determination and champagne. That girl in the photo had been terrified but did it anyway. She deserved my focus now, not the endless drama back home. My laptop pinged with an email from Miguel. Nike loves your ideas. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate. I smiled and replied, yes. Let Willow figure out her own life for once. Let Mom and Dad deal with the consequences of their choices. I had a celebration to plan. The knock on my apartment door came at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't expecting anyone, and my heart nearly stopped when I looked through the peephole. Willow stood there, mascara streaked down her face, clutching a designer suitcase that probably cost more than my rent. I know you're in there, she called out. Your light's on. I took a deep breath and opened the door. How did you find my address? I called every real estate agent in Brooklyn until I found one who remembered you. She pushed past me into the apartment. Nice place. Kind of small, though. What are you doing here, Willow? She dropped her suitcase with a thud. Mom and Dad are being impossible. They've frozen my credit cards. They're making me apply for jobs. And Dad actually suggested I take a barista position. Me? A barista? I crossed my arms. The horror. Don't be sarcastic. This is serious. She collapsed onto my couch. I thought maybe I could stay with you for a while. Just until I figure things out. Absolutely not. Come on, Addie, we're sisters. Yes, we are. Which is exactly why you can't stay here. I remained standing, maintaining distance. This is what you always do, Willow. You create chaos, then expect everyone else to fix it. That's not fair. No? What about my college graduation? You had a crisis because your boyfriend didn't like your dress, and Mom made me skip the ceremony to take you shopping. I was young then. You were 19. I worked my ass off for that degree, and I didn't even get to walk across the stage because you needed attention. Willow's lower lip trembled. Why are you being so mean? I'm not being mean, I'm being honest. I sat in the chair opposite her. Do you know what I was doing when Mom called that night, demanding I come home to help you? She shook her head. I was celebrating landing this job, the biggest opportunity of my career, and Mom expected me to give it up because you might have to face consequences for once in your life. I didn't ask her to do that. No, you never explicitly ask, Willow. You just cry and panic until someone fixes everything for you. She stood up abruptly, pacing my small living room. So, what am I supposed to do? Live with Mom and Dad forever? Work as a barista? You're supposed to grow up. Get a job, any job. Learn to manage your money. Stop expecting other people to solve your problems. Easy for you to say. You've always been the perfect one, the responsible one. Because I had to be. My voice rose. Do you think I wanted to work 3 jobs in college? To miss out on parties and dating because I was too busy being your backup plan? Willow stopped pacing, her face crumpling. I didn't realize. No, you didn't. Because you never had to think about anyone but yourself. My phone buzzed. A text from Miguel about tomorrow's meeting. The real world, my new life, calling. You need to leave, I said firmly. Go home, Willow. Face your problems head on for once. Mum was right, she whispered. You've changed. You're cold now. No, I'm just done being everyone's safety net. I walked to the door and opened it. You can stay in a hotel tonight if you want, but you're not staying here. She grabbed her suitcase, tears flowing freely now. I thought you loved me. I do love you. That's why I'm not enabling you anymore. At the door, she turned back. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? Then you'll learn from it and try again. That's what adults do. After she left, I sat on my couch, shaking. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Mom already. Willow had obviously called her. I texted Natasha. Willow just showed up at my apartment. She replied immediately. Holy shit, you okay? Yeah, sent her away. Feel like a monster. You're not a monster. You're teaching her the lesson your parents never did. I looked around my apartment, small but mine, paid for with my own money, decorated with my own taste. On my desk, The Nike contract sat next to a stack of other projects. My new life, built on my own terms. My phone rang again. Mom. This time, I turned it off completely. Tomorrow, I had a meeting to prepare for. Tomorrow, I would continue building my career, my independence, my future. And Willow? For the first time in her life, she would have to build her own future too. Maybe that was the greatest gift I could give her, even if she couldn't see it yet. 2 months after Willow's surprise visit, Natasha's weekly update call brought unexpected news. Your sister got a job, she said, the surprise evident in her voice. I nearly dropped my coffee. What kind of job? Receptionist at a dental office. And get this, she's been there for 3 weeks already. I sat down at my kitchen counter. You're kidding. Nope, your mom's been complaining to everyone that it's beneath Willow, but your sister's actually showing up every day. On time. Wow, I struggled to process this information. How do you know all this? I ran into her at Starbucks. She was on her lunch break, wearing scrubs and everything. She seemed different, more grounded. My phone beeped with another call. Miguel. I have to go, Natasha. Work call. Adeline. Miguel's voice was serious. Can you come to the office? Now? 20 minutes later, I sat in his office staring at him in disbelief. Paris? The Nike campaign was so successful, they want us to handle their European launch. 3 months in Paris leading the team. He leaned forward. It's a huge opportunity. When? Next week. I know it's sudden, but... My phone lit up with a text from Dad. Please call. Emergency. I ignored it. I'll do it. You sure? It's a big move, even temporarily. Another text from Dad. It's about my health. Need to talk. My hand froze over the phone. Miguel noticed. Everything okay? I don't know. Can I have an hour? Outside Miguel's office, I called Dad. Princess, his voice was weak. I had a heart attack yesterday. The world tilted sideways. What? Why didn't anyone call me sooner? Your mother wanted to, but I asked her to wait until I could talk to you myself. He paused for breath. It was a mild one. I'm okay. But there's more. What do you mean? The business. I've been struggling for months. The stress. Well, the doctors say I need to step back. Dad. Willow's been amazing, actually. He gave a weak laugh. She's been helping with paperwork, learning the business basics. She wants to try running things while I recover. I sat down hard on a nearby chair. Willow, running the business. She's changed, Adeline. This wake-up call. Losing you. It forced her to grow up. Another pause. Your mother's struggling to accept it, but Willow's really stepping up. My throat tightened. Do you need me to come home? No, Princess. That's why I waited to call. I didn't want you dropping everything and rushing back. We're managing. He coughed slightly. Willow insisted on handling things herself. Said it was time she took responsibility. I wiped away unexpected tears. Who are you, and what have you done with my family? He chuckled, then grew serious. We failed you for so long, Adeline, letting you carry everything, making you responsible for everyone else's happiness. I see that now. Dad, no, let me finish. You're leaving. It forced us all to change. Your mother's still adjusting, but she's trying. And Willow, he sounded proud. She's becoming the person she could have been all along if we hadn't babied her so much. Miguel appeared in the doorway, tapping his watch. Dad, I have to go. I'm in the middle of something at work. But I'll call tonight, okay? Of course. Go be successful. We're okay here. I walked back into Miguel's office, my mind spinning. Everything all right? He asked. My dad had a heart attack. Jesus. Look, forget Paris. Family comes first. No. I straightened up. My sister's handling it, and for the first time in my life, I actually believe she can. You sure? I thought about Willow and Scrubs, showing up to work every day. Willow learning the family business. Willow finally growing up. Yes, I'm sure. I picked up the Paris contract. Where do I sign? That night, I called Natasha to tell her about Paris. She squealed with excitement, then turned serious. Your mum called me today, about your dad. I know about the heart attack. No, not that. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry. Actually used those words. I sat in silence, letting that sink in. She said she's been seeing a therapist, working on her control issues. Natasha paused. People can change, Adeline. Yeah, I said softly, looking at my packed suitcase for Paris. I'm starting to believe that. My phone buzzed with a text from Willow. Heard about Paris. Congratulations, I mean it. For the first time since I'd left, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but possibility. Maybe we all needed to find our own paths to grow up. Paris was everything I'd dreamed of and more. But Dad's second heart attack brought me home after just 6 weeks. Standing outside his hospital room, I barely recognized my sister in her business attire, typing furiously on her laptop. The insurance company's being difficult, Willow said without looking up, but I've got it handled. When was the last time you slept? She finally met my eyes, dark circles evident under her makeup. Tuesday, maybe. I'm trying to run the business, deal with insurance, and coordinate with Dad's doctors. She's not coping well. Where is she? Cafeteria. She stress bakes now. The nurses are getting tired of her muffins. I sat beside her. How bad is it? The doctors say he needs bypass surgery. Triple bypass. Her voice cracked slightly. The business is struggling, and our insurance has a massive deductible. I've been going through the books, trying to figure something out. I can help with the medical bills, I offered. No. Willow's response was immediate. You've got your life in Paris. I've got this. Willow, I mean it, Addie. I'm not that helpless girl anymore. She showed me her laptop screen. Look, I've already restructured some of Dad's business loans. Found ways to cut costs without laying anyone off. I just need to figure out the insurance situation. Mom appeared with a basket of muffins, stopping short when she saw me. Adeline, you're here. Of course I'm here. She set down the muffins and hugged me awkwardly. I didn't think, with your important Paris job. It's Dad, I said simply. Tears filled her eyes. I'm sorry, for everything. I know it's too late, but... Mum, Willow interrupted. The doctor's here. The surgeon explained the procedure, risks, and recovery time. Mom started crying again. Willow took notes on her laptop. I watched them both, feeling like I'd stepped into an alternate universe. The surgery's scheduled for tomorrow morning, the doctor concluded. Any questions? The insurance, Willow began, is approved, a familiar voice said behind us. We turned to see Miguel standing there, looking out of place in his designer suit. What are you doing here? I asked. Handling the insurance situation. He handed Willow some papers. The company's international health coverage extends to immediate family of employees on overseas assignments. I had them backdate it to when you accepted the Paris position. Willow scanned the documents, her hands shaking. This covers everything. The surgery, the recovery, all of it. Miguel, I started, but he held up his hand. The Paris team can handle things for a few more weeks. Take care of your family. After he left, Mom turned to me. He seems nice. He's my boss, Mom. A boss who flew from Paris to help with your father's insurance. She raised an eyebrow. People don't do that for just employees. Can we focus? Willow was back to her laptop. We need to prepare for Dad's recovery. He'll need care at home, physical therapy. I'll handle that, Mom said quietly. I've been talking to someone, a therapist, learning to be more present, less controlling. Mom's actually cooking now, Willow added. Real food, not just stress baking. And you? I asked Willow. How are you really doing with all this? She closed her laptop. Terrified, overwhelmed, but also capable. For the first time in my life, I know I can handle things, even if they're hard, even if I'm scared. Your sister's become quite the businesswoman, Mom said proudly. She reminds me of you sometimes. No, Willow shook her head. I'm not trying to be Adeline anymore. I'm trying to be me, just a better version. Dad was awake when we entered his room. My girls, he smiled weakly. All three of you, together. The surgery's approved, Willow told him. Everything's arranged. Never doubted you for a minute, sweetheart. He turned to me. Paris treating you well? It can wait, I said. Family comes first. Mom flinched at her own words being turned around, but Dad just smiled. No, princess. Family comes first doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. It means supporting each other while everyone grows. He squeezed my hand. Go back to Paris after the surgery. We've got this covered. Looking at Willow's quiet confidence, Mom's softened edges, and Dad's proud smile, I realized he was right. This wasn't the family I'd fled from months ago. We'd all changed, grown, learned to stand on our own and support each other in healthier ways. Okay, I agreed, but I'm staying until you're recovered from surgery. Deal, Willow said. Now, let's talk about your marketing expertise. The business could use some fresh ideas. We spent the night planning, talking, and actually listening to each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and sometimes that's enough. Welcome to Gibson & Gibson Marketing, Willow greeted me at the door of Dad's renovated office building. What do you think? I stared at the modern glass entrance, the sleek new logo, and the bustling employees visible through the windows. I barely recognize it. Wait until you see inside. She led me through, proudly pointing out changes. We've doubled our client base since implementing your marketing strategies. Dad mostly works from home now, but he comes in for the big meetings. And Mom started her own catering business. Turns out all that stress baking had a silver lining. Willow laughed. She's actually really good at it. In the main conference room, Dad sat at the head of the table, looking healthier than I'd seen him in years. There's my Paris director. Not anymore, I corrected, hugging him. New York's home base now. Paris is just a quarterly visit. Speaking of New York, Willow pulled out a folder. I have a proposal for you. Oh? We want to open a New York branch. Dad and I talked about it and... She took a deep breath. We'd like you to run it. I blinked. What? As an equal partner, Dad added, your sister's ideas and your marketing expertise, you'd be unstoppable. I already have a job. Miguel thought you might say that. Willow smiled knowingly. Miguel? Who do you think approached us about a potential merger? Dad's eyes twinkled. Marshall and Brooks's New York office merging with Gibson & Gibson. You'd head the combined operation. I sat down hard. You've been talking to Miguel? For months. Willow sat beside me. Look, I know our history is complicated, but we're not the same people anymore. I'm not asking you to save me or fix anything. I'm asking you to be my partner. Equal stakes, equal responsibility. What about Mum? Won't she expect... Mum's too busy with her catering company to interfere. Dad chuckled, though she does insist on providing food for all our client meetings. My phone buzzed. Miguel. Have they shown you the proposal yet? You knew about this? I texted back. Who do you think suggested it? You've outgrown being just an employee. Time to build something of your own. Willow watched me nervously. I know it's a lot to consider. Show me the numbers, I interrupted. Her face lit up as she pulled out spreadsheets and projections. We spent hours going through them, debating strategies, building on each other's ideas. This wasn't the old dynamic of me fixing her problems. This was true collaboration. One condition, I said finally. Name it. We keep the offices separate. I run New York, you run Chicago. We coordinate but maintain independence. Already planned for that. She pulled out another document. Draft partnership agreement. Completely equal, completely independent. When did you get so corporate? When I realized I was actually good at it. She smiled. Turns out I just needed to find my own path instead of being pushed onto someone else's. Dad stood up. This calls for celebration. Your mother's been stress baking all morning, waiting for an answer. I haven't said yes yet. Please, Willow scoffed. I saw your face when you were going through those projections. You're in. She was right. The numbers were solid, the strategy sound, and the opportunity perfect. But more than that, the dynamic felt right, equal, healthy. Mum was waiting at their house with a spread that could feed an army. Well, we're going to need a New York office warming party, I said. She hugged me, whispering, I'm so proud of who you've become, who you've helped us all become. Mom's getting sentimental, Willow Stage whispered. Quick, someone give her something to bake. We all laughed, naturally, easily, without the underlying tension that had marked our family gatherings for so long. My phone buzzed again. Miguel. Dinner tonight to celebrate, as your former boss and hopefully something more. I smiled, typing back, yes to both. Looking around at my family, Dad healthy and semi-retired, Mom finding her own passion, Willow standing confidently on her own feet, I realized something profound. Sometimes running away isn't about escape. Sometimes it's about creating enough distance for everyone to grow into who they're meant to be. To Gibson and Gibson, Dad raised his glass, and to the daughters who made it possible. To finding our own paths, Willow added, to healthy boundaries, Mom said softly. I raised my glass, looking at these familiar strangers who had become the family I always hoped we could be. To new beginnings. And this time, I truly meant it.
My name's Carrie, and if you're expecting a fairy tale, you might want to look elsewhere. My life's been anything but, starting from when I was just 3. That's when my mom decided she'd had enough of us, or maybe it was just Dad and me she'd had enough of. She took off with some guy she met at a bar, or so the story goes. Never much cared to get into the specifics, the outcome was the same either way. She was gone, leaving me and Dad to fend for ourselves. School was a trip. Kids can be real jerks, especially when they sniff out something they think they can use against you. Hey, Carrie, gonna run off like your mom? That was a popular one for a while. Or, guess it runs in the family, huh, whenever I'd mess up or get in trouble. Kids, right? Don't let them get to you, Dad would say. They don't know Jack. He had a way of making it seem like it was us against the world, which, I guess, it kinda was. My dad, Jack, he was a rock. Started out slinging hammers on construction sites, then clawed his way up to running his own gig. The man busted his back so I wouldn't want for anything. And I didn't, not really. He made damn sure of it. But there was always this hole, you know? No matter how many new shoes or gadgets he threw my way. Graduation was a blur of caps and gowns, and before I knew it, I was stepping onto a college campus. Fresh start, new faces. Nobody knew about my mom and her leaving. It was liberating. For the first time, I wasn't Carrie, the girl with the runaway mom. Just Carrie. College was like stepping into another world. Nobody gave two hoots about my past. My mom's story? Might as well have been ancient history. It was all about the here and now. Classes, parties, late-night cram sessions. I started to feel like I could leave that old version of myself behind. My self-esteem? Shot through the roof. I was making friends, acing classes, and for once, I didn't feel like I was playing catch-up with everyone else. One evening, I found myself at this dive bar with a bunch of classmates. The place was buzzing, the kind of hum that told you stories were being made. I was wedged into a booth with Sarah and Mike, nursing a beer and pretending I understood their debate about some philosophical crap. So, Carrie, Mike slurred, turning his bleary eyes on me. What's your story? You always dodge the question. Sarah elbowed him. Lay off, man. Not everyone's an open book. I shrugged, the old anxiety nibbling at the edges of my newfound confidence. Not much to tell. Grew up here, Dad's in construction. Came to college to get away from the same old, same old. Life in college was a smooth ride, all things considered. Classes, friends, a couple of forgettable dates here and there. But nothing serious, you know? I was busy carving out a little slice of life for myself, away from the shadows of my past. And then, bam! Lucas happened. It was a typical Friday night. Sarah had dragged me to this house party, promising it'd be a blast. "Come on, Carrie, you need to get out more. Live a little," she'd said, practically pulling me out the door. The place was packed, music blasting, people everywhere. I was nursing my drink, feeling kind of out of my element, when Lucas bumped into me. Literally. Spilled his drink down my front. "Shit, I'm so sorry," he blurted, eyes wide, a look of genuine horror on his face. "Great, just what I needed," I muttered, dabbing at my shirt with some napkins he'd handed me. "Let me make it up to you. Another drink? On me, obviously," he offered, still looking mortified but hopeful. I eyed him, taking in his messy hair and the earnest look in his eyes. "Sure, why not? Can't get worse, right?" That drink turned into 3, and before I knew it, we were holed up in a corner, talking like we'd known each other for years. Lucas was easy to talk to. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. "So, Carrie, what's your deal? You always hang out at parties looking like you'd rather be anywhere else?" he teased, nudging my shoulder lightly. I rolled my eyes, a smile tugging at my lips, despite myself. "Nah, just not my scene, I guess. I'm more of a quiet nights and good books kind of girl." "Ah, a mystery wrapped in an enigma," he quipped, winking at me. "I like it." We delved into everything, our majors, our hometowns, our hopes for the future. Lucas was studying architecture, had dreams of designing sustainable buildings. "Make the world a little less shitty, you know," he said, passion lighting up his eyes. It was refreshing, talking to someone so different from me yet so similar in many ways. He told me about his mom, how she'd raised him on her own after his dad left. "She's a fighter, my mom. Taught me everything I know about not giving up." I found myself opening up about my dad, how he'd been both parents rolled into one. "He's my hero, honestly. Worked his ass off to give me a good life." Lucas nodded, understanding flickering in his gaze. "Sounds like we both got lucky with the parent lottery, huh?" "Yeah, I guess we did," I agreed, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the alcohol. As the night wound down, Lucas leaned in, his voice lowering. "I don't know about you, but I'm really glad I spilled my drink on you." I laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. "Me too, Lucas. Me too." He walked me home that night, the streets quiet and the air crisp around us. When we reached my door, he hesitated, shuffling his feet. "So, can I see you again? Maybe without the party and the spilled drinks?" I bit my lip, considering. A part of me was screaming to say yes, to dive headfirst into whatever this was. Another part was cautious, wary of getting too close. But looking into Lucas's hopeful eyes, I found myself nodding. "Yeah, I'd like that." Fast forward through countless dates, late-night phone calls, and studying sessions together, we were inseparable. College life was good, but having Lucas in it made it great. Before I knew it, graduation rolled around. Walking across that stage, diploma in hand, I spotted Lucas in the crowd, cheering louder than anyone else. Felt like my heart was gonna burst right out of my chest. Life after college was a blur of new beginnings. Landed a job as an accountant, and Lucas kicked off his career in architecture. We were doing it, making our way in the big, wide world. And we were doing it together. One day, out of the blue, life decided to throw us another curveball. I was pregnant. The 2 lines on the test, clear as day. My world stopped for a minute, everything silent around me. When I told Lucas, his reaction was a mix of shock and something else, joy, maybe? He took my hands in his, eyes shining with a mix of emotions. "Carrie, this is... wow. We're gonna have a baby." The weight of the moment hung between us, heavy and sweet all at once. Then, Lucas, ever the straight shooter, said what we were both thinking but hadn't dared to voice yet. Guess it's time to stop messing around, huh? Think about making it official. You know, a wedding. Meeting Lucas's mom, Carol, was like stepping into a hurricane when you've only ever dealt with a light drizzle. Lucas had prepped me, saying she was a bit much sometimes, but that was the understatement of the century. We were at her house, a cozy little place that looked like it belonged in one of those home magazines, all neat and pretty. But the atmosphere? Ice cold, especially after Lucas dropped the baby bomb. Carol just stared at us for what felt like an eternity, her eyes drilling into me. Then, she finally spoke, her voice sharp as a knife. A baby? You're sure it's Lucas's? Lucas looked like he'd been slapped. Mom, what the hell? I was stunned, mouth dry, words stuck in my throat. This was the woman who raised the guy I love? She continued, her gaze never leaving mine. I mean, it's a valid question, Lucas. With her background and all. I felt my face flush with anger. My background? What's that supposed to mean? Carol sighed, as if explaining to a child. Your mother left your family, Carrie. That says something about your character. Lucas jumped in, his tone desperate. Mom, stop it. That's not fair. Carrie's not her mother. But Carol was on a roll, ignoring Lucas. And you, getting pregnant so young. Are you trying to trap my son? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Trap him? We're in this together, Carol. It's not like I planned this on my own. Lucas stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Enough, Mom. This is insane. You're talking about the woman I love and our child. Carol's face softened for a fraction of a second before she went back on the offensive. I'm just looking out for you, Lucas. You have to think about these things before you ruin your life. I was fuming, but Lucas squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea to stay calm. We've thought about it, Mom. We're getting married. And we'd like your blessing, but we don't need it. Carol scoffed, shaking her head. Marriage. Your kids playing at being adults. Fine, do what you want. But don't expect me to be happy about it. Our wedding was nothing fancy, just a modest gathering with the people who mattered most. My dad was beaming the whole time, practically glowing with pride. But Carol, my new mother-in-law, might as well have been sucking on lemons all evening. Her face was set in a permanent scowl, like she'd walked into the wrong party and couldn't find the exit. At first, after the wedding, I tried to get on Carol's good side, thinking maybe she just needed time to warm up to me. Lucas and I would go over to her place together, but each visit felt like walking into a lion's den. She had this way of talking, dropping little sarcastic comments and laughing them off, but they always landed like punches. Stuff about the baby, like, sure hope the kid gets Lucas's brains, we don't need another runaway in the family. I bit my tongue so much during those visits, it's a wonder I could still talk. But the worst part wasn't the snide remarks, it was how Lucas started acting. He and Carol were thick as thieves, always on the phone or hanging out. And bit by bit, he began to change. It was like he'd absorbed her suspicion and doubt, started looking at me like I was some stranger. One night, he came at me with this gem. Are you sure the baby's mine? You know, given your family history. I stared at him, my jaw on the floor. Are you kidding me right now? You sound just like your mom. He shrugged, a pathetic attempt at looking innocent. It's a valid question, isn't it? I was livid. No, Lucas, it's not. You know me. You know us. How can you even say that? The distance between us grew with each day, each visit to Carol's, each whispered conversation he thought I didn't hear. I stopped going over to her house, couldn't stand the toxicity. Lucas didn't seem to mind, just carried on with their little two-person fan club. One evening, after another solo visit to Carol's, Lucas came home looking troubled. Before he could launch into another one of his interrogations, I cut him off. Lucas, this has to stop. I'm tired of defending myself against accusations and insinuations, especially from you. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in what felt like forever. Carrie, I don't know what's gotten into me. It's just, my mom, she gets in my head. I shook my head, disappointment weighing heavy on my heart. Your mom isn't here, Lucas. It's just you and me. And if we're going to make this work, really work, you need to decide where your loyalties lie. For a brief, shining moment, it felt like I was living in a different world. Carol, my ever-critical mother-in-law, decided to jet off on some extended vacation, leaving us to our own devices for a whole 2 months. You wouldn't believe the change in Lucas. It was like the guy I fell for came back from the dead. We laughed more, talked more, and those nagging doubts and fights just melted away. Being pregnant felt a bit easier without Carol's constant commentary in the background. For a while there, I actually thought we'd turned a corner. Then Carol came back. It was like a switch flipped in Lucas again. The tension, the suspicion, it all came creeping back, like mold in a forgotten corner. She must have been filling his head with all sorts of nonsense the second she got back. I held on to hope, though. Hope that once our daughter was born, things would change. That seeing his child, our child, would snap Lucas out of whatever spell his mom had cast over him. Boy, was I wrong. From the moment our daughter, Lily, entered the world, Carol was on us like a hawk. She'd swoop into our home uninvited, under the guise of helping. But her help was more like a barrage of criticism. You're holding her all wrong, she'd snap, watching me like I was about to drop Lily on her head. Her bath is too cold. Are you trying to freeze her? She'd accuse, sticking a finger in the bathwater like some kind of twisted Goldilocks. And the feeding? According to Carol, I might as well have been trying to poison Lily with the way I was going about it. Nothing I did was right. I couldn't even change a diaper without Carol lamenting how I was setting Lily up for a lifetime of discomfort. Her favorite jab? It's clear your mother never taught you anything. Look at this place. It's a mess. And you're just lazy. Each word was a knife, and I felt myself bleeding out, bit by bit. Lucas, for his part, was no help. He'd parrot his mother's concerns, adding his own layer of doubt to the mix. One particularly rough day, Carol was on her usual tirade about the state of the house, her voice a grating symphony of dissatisfaction. This is no environment for a child. It's filthy. And you're just sitting around. What kind of mother are you? I was at my breaking point. I'm doing my best, Carol. Maybe if you actually offered help instead of just criticism, things would be different. Her laugh was sharp, dismissive. Help? Dear, you need more than help. You need a miracle to learn how to take proper care of a child. Lucas walked in just as the words left her mouth, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. What's going on here? Your wife, Carol said, turning her poison-tipped words toward him, is clueless. It's a wonder Lily is thriving at all. I looked to Lucas, hoping for some sign of support. But all I saw was hesitation, a man torn between his mother and his wife. The night was rough. Lily's tummy was acting up, keeping us both awake till the early hours. Deciding we both needed the rest, I took the day off to lie down with her, hoping she'd feel better soon. But then Carol burst in like a tornado, her voice booming through the house about how dirty it was and that there was nothing to eat. This place is a mess. And what about dinner? Lucas can't be expected to cook for himself. I was too tired and frazzled to deal with her. Lucas said he'd handle dinner tonight. It's fine. I mumbled, trying to keep my voice down so Lily wouldn't wake up. Carol wasn't having it. She raised her voice even louder. He should not have to. It's your job to take care of him. Get up and start cooking. Ignoring her, I went back to the bedroom, hoping she'd get the hint and leave. But no, Carol followed, ranting right into the bedroom about how I was failing as a wife and mother. Fearful her yelling would disturb Lily, I got up, gently took Carol by the arm, and led her towards the door. Please, just stop. You're going to wake her. I pleaded quietly. That's when she started screaming. "Are you kicking me out? How dare you lay your hands on me?" Lucas came home right at that moment. Seeing me with my hand on his mother, he lost it. "What the hell do you think you're doing to my mom?" he bellowed. Before I could explain, he shoved me. I lost my balance, my head cracking against the edge of the bedside table. Everything went black. Waking up to cold water being splashed on my face was a shock. Carol and Lucas were both standing over me, looking more angry than concerned. Lily's cries filled the air, adding to the chaos. Lucas was livid. "Until you prove that's my daughter, I'm not touching her. Deal with her crying." He practically threw me towards the bedroom. The room spun around me as I tried to stand, my head pounding in pain. I'd never felt so alone. My dad, the gentlest man I knew, had never so much as raised his voice at me. And here was the man I loved, the father of my child, pushing me away like I was nothing. I picked up Lily, holding her close, her cries slowly turning into whimpers. As I rocked her, the reality of what just happened hit me hard. Lucas and his mother had crossed a line I never imagined they would. The next morning, Lucas left for work as if nothing had happened, and I quickly packed my suitcase and called a taxi. The moment I stepped into Dad's house, with Lily cradled against my chest, the weight of the world seemed to crash down on me. "Dad, I didn't know where else to go," I whispered, my voice breaking, feeling the tears I'd held back start to edge their way forward. He didn't say much, just took us in and held me tight, Lily squished between us. "You're safe here," he murmured, his voice a steady rock in the chaos. "Tell me everything." Explaining it all to Dad was like reliving a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. His face grew darker with each word, his anger palpable. "We're going to the police," he decided, his tone leaving no room for argument. "And then, we're putting an end to this." The police station was intimidating, cold, and impersonal. The officer behind the desk looked up as we approached. "Can I help you?" I took a deep breath, Dad's hand on my shoulder grounding me. "I need to report domestic violence." The officer's demeanor changed immediately, his voice softer. "Of course, ma'am. Please, come with me. We'll talk somewhere private." Sitting in that small room, with Dad by my side, I poured everything out to the officer, who listened intently, nodding encouragingly. "It's important we know everything," he assured me after I stumbled over the details, ashamed and scared. When Dad's journalist friend got in touch about the TV segment, I was hesitant. "It's a chance to tell your story, on your terms," Dad encouraged. "You could change things for others." Sitting under the harsh studio lights, facing the host, my stomach was a knot of nerves. "Many are calling you a symbol of courage," the host began. "What made you decide to speak out?" "I found strength I didn't know I had. I realized silence was another form of fear," I said, my voice steady. "I needed to fight back, not just for me, but for Lily. No one should have to go through this." The segment aired, and suddenly, my story was out there, sparking conversations, drawing support from corners I never expected. Lucas's facade crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny, his actions condemned. The court proceedings were a whirlwind. Lucas was found guilty of domestic violence, stripped of any rights to Lily. And in a twist I hadn't seen coming, they ran a DNA test. Turned out, Lily was his, no doubt about it. His baseless accusations, all for nothing. Carol didn't get off scot-free either. The judge hit her with a fine for emotional abuse. It wasn't much, but it was something, a recognition of the hell she'd put me through. After the divorce, I kept my distance from Lucas and his mom, Carol. The last thing I wanted was to hear more excuses or face their denial. But Dad, ever the protector, saw an opportunity for closure, not just for us, but publicly. He arranged for us to confront Lucas and Carol in the same TV show, after which my life changed. Sitting backstage, I felt a storm of emotions. Anger, betrayal, but underneath it all, a flicker of hope for some semblance of justice. Dad squeezed my hand, his silent way of saying, we've got this." The host was known for not pulling punches, and as we took our seats, I could see Lucas and Carol were uneasy. The audience's murmurs grew quiet as the show began. "Today, we have a story of betrayal, courage, and the pursuit of justice," the host began, setting the stage. He turned to Lucas and Carol. "You've been accused of some serious mistreatment. How do you respond to these allegations?" Lucas stumbled over his words. I didn't realize how far things had gone." "I'm sorry." Carol tried to deflect. "We thought we were doing what was best." The host cut in. "Best? By whose standard?" "You pushed her to the brink." The audience's reactions ranged from disbelief to anger, their hums and murmurs filling the studio. Then, it was my turn to speak. "I don't need their apologies. What's done is done. My focus is on my daughter and giving her a life full of love and security, something they tried to take from us." Lucas looked down, unable to meet my gaze, while Carol seemed to shrink in her seat. The host nodded solemnly. "It takes incredible strength to stand in your truth. What message do you hope to send?" "That justice and kindness always win. That no one should ever feel alone or without options," I said, my voice steady. By the end of the show, Lucas and Carol had publicly apologized, but their words felt hollow. I wasn't looking for their remorse, I was looking for a way to move forward, to show Lily the strength of standing up for oneself. Leaving the studio, Dad put an arm around me. "You were amazing out there. Lily's going to grow up knowing how strong her mom is." And he was right. As I looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully in my arms, I knew our future was bright. Together, with my dad's unwavering support, we'd build a life defined by love, resilience, and the belief that after every storm, there comes a new dawn. I never thought my life would take a sharp turn at a wedding that wasn't even mine. That day, I was just the girl behind the camera, trying to make a name for myself in the chaotic world of photography. My job was to capture the joy, the tears, and, if I got lucky, the soul of the moment. Little did I know, my soul was about to intertwine with someone else's. The bride and groom were a typical couple, all smiles and dances, lost in their bubble of happiness. I was moving around, clicking away, making sure to get every angle, when I bumped into him, Alex. He was a guest, a friend of the groom's or something. Tall, with a mischievous grin that didn't match the formal wear he was somewhat uncomfortably stuffed into. "Whoa, careful there. Wouldn't want you ruining your camera before the cake cutting," he joked, steadying my arm. I rolled my eyes, not really in the mood for banter. "Thanks, I guess. I'll manage." He chuckled, not at all deterred. "Name's Alex. And you are?" "Does it matter?" "I'm just the photographer," I replied, focusing on adjusting my lens rather than his piercing gaze. "Just the photographer who captures moments that'll be treasured for a lifetime." "Sounds pretty important to me," he quipped, leaning in slightly, curious. I sighed, finally giving him a glance. "I'm Mia. And you're blocking my shot." Alex stepped aside, hands raised in surrender, but his smile never wavered. "My apologies, Mia. How about I make it up to you by not getting in your way again?" "Try not to," I muttered, already moving to my next spot, trying to ignore the warmth his smile sparked in me. The wedding went on, and so did our brief encounters. Alex had a knack for popping up wherever I was, each time with a comment or a joke, trying to chip away at my focus. It was annoying. It was also kind of refreshing. As the evening wound down, I found myself outside, taking a breather, when Alex joined me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Thought you could use one," he said, handing me a glass. I took it, our fingers brushing briefly. "Why are you so interested in the photographer?" He shrugged, leaning against the railing. "Why wouldn't I be? You're interesting. And pretty damn good with that camera." I sipped the champagne, letting the edge of my guard down. "Thanks. You're not too bad yourself, for an annoying guest." Annoying, huh? He grinned. I prefer charmingly persistent. We talked more than I expected that night. About photography, about life, about dreams that seemed too big for our current worlds. Alex had this way of making everything seem possible. It was dangerous. It was exhilarating. As the night ended and we said our goodbyes, Alex asked for my number. I hesitated, not sure if I wanted to dive into whatever this was. But the spark in his eyes, the promise of more laughs and shared dreams, had me typing my number into his phone. "I'll call you," he said, a statement more than a promise. And call he did. One date turned into many, laughter filled my days, and before I knew it, I was in love. Alex was everything I never knew I needed: supportive, loving, challenging. He made me want to be better, do better. Our whirlwind romance led to a small, intimate wedding, just us and the people who mattered most. A year later, our son, Jake, arrived, turning our duo into a trio, completing our little universe in the bustling heart of the city. Life in the city was a whirlwind of photo shoots, baby giggles, and stolen moments with Alex amidst our busy schedules. But every so often, we'd pack up our little world and head to the suburbs to visit Alex's parents. These trips, meant to be retreats, often felt more like stepping onto a battlefield, where words were weapons and tensions ran high. Alex's dad, George, was a tough nut, old school and hard-edged. The kind of man who believed in hard work above all and wasn't shy about saying so. His wife, Ellen, was softer, trying to smooth over her husband's rougher comments with smiles and changes of subject. The first visit after Jake was born set the tone for what was to become a recurring theme. We'd just settled in, Jake asleep in my arms, when George launched into his usual spiel. "So, Alex, how's the job going? Still at that same place?" George's voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp, probing. Alex shifted uncomfortably, glancing at me before answering. "Yeah, Dad, still there. It's going well." George snorted. "Well, hope you're thinking about the future. Now with the kid and all, you can't afford to be just going well. Need to aim higher, son." I felt Alex tense beside me. I could see him mentally bracing himself, the same old argument brewing. Ellen, sensing the mood shift, hurriedly interjected. "George, let's not start with that now. Can't we just enjoy the visit?" But George was on a roll. "And what about you, Mia? Still taking pictures of other people's weddings? Thought you'd move on to something bigger by now." I bit my lip, holding back the retort that it was more than just taking pictures. Instead, I forced a smile. "I love what I do, George. It's fulfilling, and it works with our schedule." Yeah, but is it enough? You two need to think about stability, for Jake's sake," George countered, his tone implying that our choices were anything but stable. It wasn't long before another visit rolled around. This time, George's health had taken a turn for the worse. The atmosphere was somber, Ellen worn out from worry, and George, though quieter, still managed to jab at Alex's career choices. "Working hard or hardly working, son?" George coughed out, a shadow of his usual confrontational self. Alex, looking weary, tried to keep the peace. "Working hard, Dad. Always working hard." I watched the exchange, a lump forming in my throat. It was clear George's time was running out, and yet here we were, stuck in this loop of criticism and defense. After George passed away, the house felt not just emptier but quieter, like the very walls were mourning him. Ellen, now a widow, was a shadow of her bustling, energetic self. It was hard watching her go through the motions, trying to adjust to a life without her partner of so many years. I made it a point to call her often, lending an ear, or just sharing the day-to-day happenings to break through her solitude. She appreciated it, I could tell, even if our conversations were often peppered with her sighs and reminiscing about George. During one of these calls, Ellen mentioned that Laura, Alex's sister, decided to move back home. The news hit Alex like a ton of bricks. He was livid, cursing under his breath about Laura's real intentions. "Can you believe her? Moving in with Mom, just like that? It's clear as day, she's eyeing the inheritance. Always the opportunist, waiting to swoop in. Alex fumed over dinner, his fork hitting the plate a little too hard. I was taken aback by his anger. Alex, isn't she just trying to be there for your mom? After all, Ellen is going through a lot right now. He scoffed, shaking his head. Mia, you don't know Laura like I do. She's slick, always playing the caring daughter card when it suits her. And now, with Dad gone, she's probably got her sights set on whatever she can get her hands on. It was surprising, hearing Alex talk this way about his sister. I knew they had their differences, but this was a side of him I hadn't seen. It made me uneasy, the ease with which he painted Laura in such dark strokes. The shift from our city apartment to Ellen's suburban home was jarring. One day we were in the heart of the hustle, the next, surrounded by two quiet streets and the ever-present shadow of George's absence. This move, sprung on us by Alex, wasn't welcomed by any party involved, least of all Ellen. Alex, what on earth are you thinking? This house is my space to grieve, not a hotel for your family. Ellen had protested over the phone, her voice a mix of shock and irritation. But Alex was determined, painting it as a grand gesture of support. Mom, it's settled. We're coming. You shouldn't be alone in that big house anyway. I watched him pace our living room, phone pressed to his ear, marveling at his stubbornness. My input? Seemingly unnecessary. By the time he hung up, it was a done deal, despite Ellen's reservations and my own unease. The day we moved in, Ellen greeted us with a tight smile, her home now invaded by our clutter and noise. Laura was there too, her welcome far less strained, surprisingly. Hey, the more the merrier, right? She quipped, eyeing our boxes with an indifference that irked Alex. Mia, can you believe this? Alex grumbled as we unpacked in what used to be George's study. Laura's acting like she owns the place. I sighed, setting a framed photo on the desk. She's trying to help her mom, Alex. We're all adjusting here. Adjusting was an understatement. The dynamics within the house shifted like sand underfoot. Ellen, once the matriarch, seemed to shrink, her voice lost amid the chaos of our resettled lives. Laura, on the other hand, floated through her days, contributing little and observing much. Dinner times were the worst. Ellen would cook, a silent figure moving through her kitchen, while Laura somehow always dodged the task. Alex and I would offer to help, but Ellen's polite refusals left us sidelined, spectators in our own lives. Why don't you let me cook tomorrow, Ellen? I'd offer, only to be met with a weary smile. Oh, dear, no need. I've got it. You take care of Jake and your work. That's enough. And so, the pattern continued, with me feeling more like a guest than a member of the household. It didn't take long for the financial arrangements to rear their ugly head. Alex, ever the man of the house, took it upon himself to dictate terms. Mia, I'll handle the groceries. You can cover the utilities, all right? He declared one evening, as if it were the most natural division of responsibilities. I blinked, taken aback. Sure, I guess. But should we talk about this with Ellen? It's her house, after all. Alex waved off my concerns. No need. Mom's got enough on her plate. We're helping out. Helping out felt a lot like taking over. My photography gigs became my escape, a chance to breathe beyond the suffocating walls of a home that wasn't ours. Yet, even as I immersed myself in work, the home front demanded more. Laura's busy schedule somehow justified her lack of contribution, leaving me to pick up the slack. Mia, can you believe Laura? Always too busy to help out. It's all on you and Mom, Alex would rant, oblivious to the irony of his words. I'd nod, biting back my frustration. Yeah, too busy. I noticed. It wasn't just the chores or the finances. It was the weight of living under a roof filled with unspoken grievances and mourning. Ellen's grief was a constant presence, her occasional tears a reminder of the life she lost. Laura's indifference and Alex's growing bitterness added layers to an already complex living situation. 2 years had melted away since we moved into Ellen's place, and life had found its peculiar rhythm. Ellen, though frilier with each passing day, never lost her spirit, always finding a bit of strength to help me with Jake, who was now 3 and as curious as a cat. He had this thing for gadgets, mimicking me whenever I was on my phone or working with my camera. So, thinking it might fuel his curiosity in a good way, I got him a kitty smartphone. It was a hit. He was snapping photos of everything from his half-eaten breakfast to his toys strewn across the floor, and using the voice recorder like he was on some secret mission. One day, Alex decided to take Jake for a walk, a bit of father-son bonding time. They came back with Jake chattering non-stop about the ducks they saw. As I was cleaning up, I spotted Jake's toy phone left on the couch, a little smudged. I picked it up, intending to give it a quick wipe, when my finger accidentally hit the play button on one of the voice recordings. What I heard next stopped me cold. It was Alex and Laura, their voices clear as day, talking in a way I'd never imagined. They weren't at each other's throats, as they'd have us believe. No, they were in cahoots, laying out plans that chilled me to the bone. Alex's voice cut through first. "We've got to be smarter about this, Laura. Mom's no fool, she's starting to ask questions." Laura's reply was sharp. "Chill, Alex. You worry too much. We just need to keep up the act a little longer." My heart raced. Act? What act? Alex was confessing to Laura about losing his job because he couldn't be bothered to show up, admitting he'd been mooching off me ever since. But what twisted the knife was their scheme against Ellen. Laura was ranting about Ellen's plans to move to a fancy nursing home, how they needed to stop her before she drained what they saw as their inheritance. Their plot was sinister, talking about declaring Ellen incompetent, all to grab her property. Or is it better to get rid of her physically altogether? The recording cut off abruptly, leaving a silence that roared in my ears. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, my mind racing. Betrayal wasn't a strong enough word for this. This was cold, calculated deceit, a stab in the back from the people I considered family. And yet, as furious and shaken as I was, I knew I couldn't confront Alex right away. No, I needed to play this smart, for Ellen's sake, for Jake's. I couldn't let on that I knew. So, I swallowed the storm inside me, and went about the evening as if nothing had changed. Dinner was a blur. I nodded and smiled robotically, watching Alex and Laura bicker over trivialities, a performance I now knew was just for show. I had to tell Ellen. She needed to know the depth of deceit circling around her. When I played the recording for Ellen, her reaction was a mix of resignation and sadness. "I had my suspicions, dear," she sighed, "but I never had the proof. And to think, I've been helping them out financially whenever they asked." Ellen's resolve firmed up as we talked. "I've been considering moving into a nursing home, actually. I have the savings for it. But now, hearing this, we need to act, and fast, before they realize we're onto them." We called in a lawyer when Alex and Laura were out, ensuring our plans remained under wraps. Ellen was clear and direct, instructing the lawyer to change her will to exclude both Alex and Laura. The lawyer nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. A few days later, during a family dinner that was tense at best, Ellen dropped her bombshell. "I've decided to give you the house," she announced, watching as Alex and Laura's faces lit up with greedy anticipation. But then, she added the condition about paying for their 2-year stay, to the tune of $186,000. The smug smiles vanished, replaced by shock and outrage. "You can't be serious. We're not paying for anything," Alex exploded, with Laura chiming in, echoing his disbelief. Ellen remained unfazed. "Then I'll see you in court for conspiring against me," she countered, her voice steady. Their protests died down when I played the damning recording from Jake's phone. The shift in their demeanor was immediate, from outrage to fear, then to turning on each other, trying to shift the blame. Ellen's disappointment was palpable. "I don't want you two around anymore," she declared, her decision final. It was then I laid the divorce papers in front of Alex. "I'm done supporting you. You've lied, not just on me, but on your own mother," I said, my voice firm, betraying none of the turmoil inside. Alex's attempts at excuses were pathetic, and Laura was no better, both of them realizing too late the game was up. I can't be with someone who'd plot against his own mother, I continued. We're leaving. The dust had barely settled from the explosion of truths before I found myself packing up what felt like a lifetime's worth of memories into a few boxes. Jake, bless his heart, was too young to understand the storm swirling around us, his main concern being whether his toys were coming along. Mommy, can Bear and Mr. Dino come too? Jake asked, holding up his worn stuffed bear and the plastic dinosaur that had seen better days. Of course, sweetie. They're part of the family, I reassured him, forcing a smile as I packed his treasures into a box marked Jake's stuff. The apartment we moved into was a stark contrast to Ellen's spacious house, but it was ours, a sanctuary from the chaos we'd left behind. The first few nights, the silence was deafening, a reminder of the void left by the absence of familial bickering and the undercurrent of deceit. A week later, Ellen, bless her heart, decided it was time to move to that fancy nursing home she'd been talking about. Said she needed a change of scenery, and honestly, who could blame her? I went over to help her pack up her things. It was the least I could do after all we'd been through together. Alex was there too, hovering around, trying to act like he wanted to make things right between us. As if a few sorry words could fix the heap of lies he buried us under. I couldn't even bring myself to look him straight in the eye without feeling a mix of anger and pity. Just gave him this look that said, "Save it," and kept on packing. The divorce wasn't easy, but then again, what divorce is? The judge ended up making Alex pay me $50,000, compensation for all the years he'd been living off me while playing happy families. Felt like a small win, but a win nonetheless. A few months down the line, Alex and Laura finally coughed up the $186,000 they owed Ellen for staying in her house, after taking out loans against it. Ellen didn't waste any time putting that money straight into her own account, making sure it was out of reach from those two. Watching Ellen settle into that nursing home, a place she could finally call her own without the constant drama, made me think about what's really important. I just wish it hadn't come to this, she told me as we finished setting up her room. Me too, Ellen. But we're here now, and we've got to make the best of it, I said, trying to stay strong for the both of us. Settling into our new life wasn't easy, but Jake and I were making the most of it. Our apartment might have been small, but it was ours, and that made all the difference. I started picking up more photography gigs, each click of the camera a step towards rebuilding our lives. One day, as I was sorting through photos from a recent shoot, Jake came up to me, his little face screwed up in concentration. Mommy, when can we visit Grandma Ellen again? I miss her. Soon, buddy, I replied, ruffling his hair. How about this weekend? We can make a day of it. His face lit up, and in that moment, I knew no matter how tough things got, we'd be okay as long as we had each other. Visiting Ellen became our little ritual. Despite the luxury surrounding her in the nursing home, she always said our visits were the highlight of her week. It was during one of these visits that things took an unexpected turn. Alex and Laura were there, looking more run down than I remembered. The desperation was clear in their eyes, a far cry from the confident facade they used to put on. They were practically on their knees, begging Ellen for money, saying the old house was falling apart and they had nowhere else to turn. Ellen was firm, her voice steady as she refused them. I've made my decision. The rest of what I have is going to Mia and Jake. You two have done enough damage. I couldn't help but feel a mix of vindication and sadness hearing that. Alex and Laura turned to me, their eyes blazing with anger. This is all you're doing. You've turned her against us. Alex hissed, his voice low but filled with venom. Laura chimed in. Yeah, playing the victim and now look, living off what should have been ours. Ellen's patience snapped. Enough. If you two don't stop this nonsense, I'll take that recording to the police. Don't think I won't do it. The threat of the recording being handed to the authorities was enough to send them packing. Their exit was swift, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. Ellen turned to me, her gaze softening. I'm sorry you had to witness that, Mia. But I've seen enough to know where my support is best placed. I was taken aback by her words, a lump forming in my throat. Ellen, thank you. It means the world to us, but we don't want you to feel like you owe us anything. She shook her head. I owe you more than you know. You and Jake, you're my family. And it's high time I looked out for my real family. As we left the nursing home that day, I couldn't shake off the mixture of emotions swirling inside me. Relief, gratitude, but also a renewed determination to build a better future for Jake, one not shadowed by the deceit and betrayal of the past. Me and Jake, we kept visiting Ellen in that fancy nursing home she moved into. It was nice, seeing her in a good place, away from all the drama. But then, one day, she dropped a bombshell on us during one of our visits. The house, it's gone, Ellen said out of the blue, her voice shaking a bit. The bank took it because of the debts Alex and Laura racked up. I could see the pain in her eyes, the disappointment. It was like she was questioning everything she ever did as a mother. I can't believe it's come to this. After everything I tried to do for them. Ellen, this ain't on you, I told her, trying to make her see reason. You did everything a mother could. It's their choices that got them here, not yours. She looked at me, then at Jake, who was busy with a coloring book we'd brought along. At least I've got Jake, she said after a moment, a small smile breaking through. He's a blessing, Mia. You both are. It was hard, watching her grapple with the mess her children had left behind. But in those moments, I saw the strength in her, the resilience. She had faced her share of battles, but she wasn't letting this defeat her. As for Alex and Laura, they vanished, leaving a trail of debts and broken relationships in their wake. Ellen didn't even know where they'd ended up, and honestly, I didn't care to know either. They chose their path, and now they had to walk it, wherever it led. Ellen, you've got us, I reminded her as we got ready to leave that day. Me and Jake, we're your family too, and we're not going anywhere. She hugged us both, holding on a little longer than usual. Thank you, Mia, for everything. Driving back to our apartment, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. The road hadn't been easy, but we were making it through, one day at a time. And through it all, we found something worth holding on to, each other. My name's Emily, and if you told me a year ago that my life would take a turn at a dentist's office, I'd have laughed. But here we are. Let me set the scene. It's a typical Tuesday, and I'm juggling work emails with one hand and trying to coax my 5-year-old, Lily, into bravery with the other. Dentist appointments are the bane of her existence, and frankly, mine too, considering the drama they entail. Lily's clutching onto my leg like it's the last lifeboat on the Titanic, her eyes wide as saucers. I don't want to go, Mommy. The dentist is scary. Lily, sweetie, we talked about this. Dr. Harris is nice. No monsters in there, I promise, I say, trying to sound reassuring, but the truth is, I'd rather face a boardroom of execs than the dental chair myself. That's when he walked in. Jake. Though, of course, I didn't know his name then. He looked like he just stepped out of a GQ magazine, casual, but somehow still sharp. I noticed him giving us a curious glance, before he disappeared behind the receptionist's desk. Moments later, as I'm still negotiating with Lily, he reappears, squats down to Lily's level, and starts making these goofy faces. Lily, predictably, starts giggling, forgetting her fears for a moment. See, little lady, there's nothing to be afraid of. I've been coming here since I was your age. The worst part? The chair makes you feel like an astronaut. Pretty cool, right? Lily nods, now more intrigued than terrified. Are you an astronaut? She asks, eyes wide with wonder. Nah, I'm more of a spaceship engineer. He winks at her, then looks up at me. Name's Jake. Seems like we're in for the same adventure today. I smile, relieved and grateful. I'm Emily, and this brave explorer is Lily. Thanks for the assist, Jake. I was about to run out of negotiation tactics. He laughs, a sound that's easy and genuine. No worries. I have a niece about her age. Learned all my tricks from her. The rest of the visit somehow goes smoothly. Lily, now slightly enamored with the idea of being an astronaut, marches into the dentist's office with a bit less trepidation. I'm left in the waiting room, thoughts drifting to the unexpected helper who just made my day significantly easier. After the appointment, as I'm strapping Lily into her car seat, Jake walks out to the parking lot. Hey, Emily, right? Look, this might be forward, but I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee sometime. I'm taken aback, not just by the offer, but by the fact that I find myself considering it. It's been ages since I've even thought about dating. Between work and Lily, my plate's more than full. But something about Jake's straightforwardness, the ease of our brief interaction, prompts me to say, yeah, I'd like that. Coffee sounds great. He grins, and it's like the sun breaking through clouds. Fantastic. Let me give you my number. How about Saturday? As we exchange numbers, I can't help but think how life throws you curveballs. Here I was, dreading a dentist appointment, and now I'm making plans for coffee with a guy who could charm the fear out of a kid facing her nemesis. The day of the coffee meet, I find myself more nervous than I care to admit. It's just coffee, I keep telling myself. But it feels like a lot more than that. It feels like the beginning of something new, and I'm not entirely sure I'm ready for it. After that unexpected coffee date with Jake, things just kind of snowballed. It wasn't just the kind of romance you read about in cheesy novels or see in rom-coms. It was real, it was messy, and it was absolutely perfect in its own chaotic way. Jake and I started seeing each other more frequently. Between my web design gigs and his job at an engineering firm, we somehow managed to carve out time for each other. And Lily? She was over the moon with Jake around. He had this way of making her laugh, teaching her silly jokes and riddles, turning every hangout into an adventure. One evening, we were all at my place for dinner. I had attempted to make lasagna, which ended up more like a cheesy soup, but we were having a blast anyway. Jake, with a mock-serious tone, looked at me across the table. Emily, I think we need to discuss your lasagna's structural integrity. I shot back, rolling my eyes. Oh, please, Mr. Engineer. If you're so concerned about structures, maybe you should have built us a lasagna. Lily giggled between bites, enjoying the banter. Jake, can you build a lasagna house? He winked at her. Only if you promise to be the chief taste tester. It was moments like these that stitched our little patchwork family closer together. Jake wasn't just a boyfriend or a casual fling. He was becoming a part of our lives, a steadying presence that felt like it had always belonged. One night, after Lily had gone to bed and we were cleaning up the kitchen, Jake turned to me, his expression more serious than usual. Emily, I need to tell you something. I know this isn't just fun and games for me. I'm in this for the long haul, you and Lily both. His words hit me hard. Part of me had been waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to realize that a package deal with a single mom and her kid was more than he'd bargained for. But here he was, laying his cards on the table, not just willing but eager to build something lasting with us. I leaned against the counter, feeling a mixture of relief and a terrifying thrill at the prospect of letting someone in again. Jake, I won't lie. This scares the hell out of me. After everything with Lily's dad. I just want to make sure we're doing this right, not just for us, but for her too. He stepped closer, taking my hands in his. I know. And I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. But I care about you, Emily. Both of you. I'm not going anywhere. That conversation was a turning point for us. It wasn't just about dating anymore. We were building a life together, piece by piece. And with Jake, I found myself daring to dream about a future I had never thought possible. Meeting Jake's parents was a landmark I approached with a mix of anticipation and dread. Jake had been this incredible source of joy and stability for Lily and me, but the idea of fitting into his world, especially with the weight of his family's expectations, was daunting. Jake had tried to prep me, saying his folks were a bit old-fashioned but warm once you got to know them. Still, nothing could have prepared me for the actual encounter. We pulled up to this mansion that looked more like it belonged in a historical drama than real life. My stomach was in knots, and even Jake seemed tense, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced with quiet apprehension. As we walked up to the door, Jake squeezed my hand. "Just be yourself, Em. They'll love you." The door swung open to reveal a woman in her 60s, elegant in a way that made my thrift store chic feel downright shabby. She was all smiles, though, as she ushered us into their home. "Jake, darling. And you must be Emily. We've heard so much about you," she cooed, her voice dripping with a sort of politeness that felt rehearsed. Jake's dad was a stern-looking guy, with a handshake that felt like it was evaluating my worth. The small talk was painfully stiff, with questions about my job and upbringing feeling more like an interrogation than getting-to-know-you chatter. Dinner was a spread that could have fed an army, with conversation that was equally overwhelming. Jake's mom, Diane, was particularly interested in my background. "So, Emily, Jake tells us you're a web designer? That's interesting. And you're raising Lily on your own? How commendable." Her tone made it clear that interesting was placeholders for odd and unfortunate. I was trying to keep my cool, focusing on my plate more than anything. But then came the bombshell. When the topic of Lily came up, Diane's facade slipped entirely. A child already, and from a previous situation. "Jake, darling, we need to think about the lineage, don't we?" Jake choked on his drink, coughing as he tried to regain composure. "Mom, what the hell? That's way out of line." I was shell-shocked, my fork suspended in midair. "Lineage? I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were living in medieval times." Diane's lips pursed into a thin line, her eyes cold. "I only mean that Jake has responsibilities, a legacy to uphold. It's not personal, dear. You must understand, bringing in someone else's child, it's complicated." Jake's dad, silent until now, finally chimed in with a gruff, "Diane, perhaps you've said enough." But the damage was done. I couldn't sit there, being dissected and judged for things beyond my control. My past wasn't up for debate. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I think it's best if we leave." Jake was right behind me, murmuring apologies as we made our exit. The car ride home was silent for a while until Jake broke it, his voice tight with anger. "I'm so sorry, Em. I had no idea she'd go off like that. My mom can be traditional, but this was too much." I was staring out the window, trying to process the evening. "Jake, it's not about being traditional. It's about respect. I get that your family has expectations, but I won't let myself or Lily be treated like second-class citizens." Jake reached over, taking my hand. "I know, and I'm with you on this. They crossed a line tonight. I love you, Em. And Lily. That's my family. Whatever it takes, we'll get through this." His words were a small comfort, but the sting of rejection was sharp. I had faced judgment before, as a single mom, as someone who didn't follow the traditional path, but this felt different. It was one thing to defend myself against the world, quite another to have to do it against what could have been my future family. After the dinner fiasco with Jake's parents, things got a bit rocky. Jake and I had more than a few discussions, debates really, about what this all meant for us. But at the core, our commitment to each other and to building a life together didn't waver. We were in this together, come what may. Jake started spending more time at our place, practically moving in bit by bit, though he never officially said so. It was in the little things, a drawer filled with his clothes, a toothbrush next to mine, his favorite coffee blend in the pantry. Lily was thrilled. To her, Jake moving in was the best thing since sliced bread. One lazy Saturday morning, we were all in the kitchen, Jake attempting pancakes, Lily on stir duty, and me, well, I was the designated taste tester. "Mommy, look. Jake's making the pancakes blue," Lily announced, her eyes wide with excitement as she watched the batter turn a vibrant shade. Jake shot me a grin over Lily's head. "Blue pancakes, because why not? Gotta keep life interesting." I laughed, leaning against the counter. Interesting is one word for it. How about unconventional? Or bizarre? "Hey, bizarre is just interesting with a twist," Jake retorted, flipping a pancake with a flourish. "Besides, Lily's the boss of pancake colors." "Right, kiddo?" Lily nodded vigorously, her face serious. "Yep, and next we're making green ones." Our mornings turned into these pockets of domestic bliss, filled with laughter and the scent of maple syrup. It was during one of these mornings that Jake brought up the idea of him moving in officially. I've been thinking," Jake started, his tone a bit more serious as he sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. "This back and forth between our places, it's silly. I'm here all the time anyway. What do you say we make it official?" I paused, the mug halfway to my lips. It was a big step, one I hadn't anticipated taking so soon, if at all. "Jake, are you sure? I mean, after everything with your parents." He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. My parents, that's on them. This is about us, about what we want. And I want this, I want to be here, with you and Lily. Full time. If you'll have me." Looking into his eyes, I saw the sincerity, the love. It was a leap of faith, but wasn't that what love was all about? "Yes, Jake, I'll have you. We'll have you." Lily, overhearing part of our conversation, chimed in. "Does this mean Jake is gonna be here every morning for pancakes?" Jake laughed, scooping her up into his arms. "Every morning, pancakes with the boss. That's a promise." And just like that, we began a new chapter. It wasn't just me and Lily anymore, it was us, our little family. We faced challenges, of course. Integrating our lives, our routines, it took patience and a lot of communication. But every step, every compromise, brought us closer. Jake being there meant more than just an extra pair of hands or a partner in pancake making. It was having someone to share the burdens, the joys, and everything in between. It was Lily's laughter echoing through the house more frequently, it was the warmth of a hug after a long day, it was the feeling of completeness. We had our moments of doubt, of wondering if we were moving too fast, if this was the right thing. But at the end of each day, as we sat together, a mismatched, but perfect family, all those doubts faded away. We were building something beautiful, something strong. Life was almost too good to be true. Jake and I were in this bubble of happiness, especially after finding out about the baby. He was over the moon about it, said he'd always dreamed of having a kid with me. We were planning our wedding, and I was juggling a whirlwind of emotions, mostly excitement and a bit of anxiety about our growing family. Then, one day, Jake tells me he's got to dash off for some urgent family stuff in another city. Said he might be out of touch, but would ring me as soon as he could. I was a bit uneasy, but I wished him luck and told him to come back to us soon. Not long after, I get this call. It's Diane, Jake's mom, and the ice in her voice could freeze fire. She tells me, just like that, Jake's gone. Plane crash. And then she has the nerve to tell me to never call them again. Like we're some sort of inconvenience she can just brush off. My world stopped. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I scrambled through news feeds, searching for any scrap of information, but there was nothing. Not a word about any crash. Desperate for some answers, any answers, I decided to hunt down Jake's dad. I knew he sometimes hung around the dental clinic they owned, so I went there, heart pounding and mind racing. The place was busy, and I caught word that he was tied up with some big reception. I left a message with the receptionist, practically begged her to make sure he got it, and then I bolted to Jake's parents' house. I must have rung that doorbell 100 times, but no answer. It was like the world had decided to erase Jake, and I was the only one who remembered he existed. I slumped back to my car, parked outside their gate, feeling more alone than I ever had. Sat there, staring off into nothing, lost. What do you do when your whole future, the love of your life, is ripped away with a phone call? And from her, of all people. Diane never did warm up to me or the idea of us, but to lie about something like this? It was cruel, unimaginable. I didn't know where to turn. The police? Would they even take me seriously? My mind was a whirlwind of panic and despair. And underneath it all, a burning anger. If Jake was out there, somehow, I had to find him. For me, for our baby, for the life we'd dreamed of together. I decided to head back to the clinic, thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd missed something, some clue that could tell me where Jake was or if he was really. But my head was everywhere. Tears blurred my vision as I drove, mixing with the rain pelting the windshield. Everything was a haze. I kept wiping my eyes, trying to focus on the road, but all I could see was Jake's face, hear his voice, feel his absence like a physical ache. That's when it happened. The light turned red, but I didn't see it. Didn't see much of anything until it was too late. The screech of brakes, the sickening crunch of metal, and then darkness. Waking up in the hospital was like emerging from a nightmare into another. My body hurt everywhere, but it was nothing compared to the panic clawing at my insides. My mom was there, holding my hand, her face a mask of worry and relief. "Mom," I croaked, my throat dry and my voice barely a whisper. "Jake, what happened to Jake?" "Shoo, baby, you're okay, you're alive. That's what matters. And the baby's okay, too," she said, trying to smile, but I could see the tears in her eyes. I tried to process her words. Alive. The baby was okay. But Jake. Jake, Mom. Where's Jake? I need. She brushed my hair back from my forehead, a soothing gesture from my childhood. "Honey, we don't know yet. I've been calling, but his phone's off." Hearing that, a wave of despair washed over me, pulling me under. I couldn't lose Jake. Not now, not after everything we'd dreamed of, everything we'd planned. Our family. I must have passed out again because the next thing I remember was the beep of machines and a different kind of pain, sharper, more insistent. Nurses bustled around, checking IVs, murmuring to each other. Mom was still there, holding my hand, but now her face was etched with deeper lines of worry. "Mom," I said again, my voice stronger, but filled with fear. "You gotta find him. Please. Jake needs to know." "I promise, Emily. I'll do everything I can. We'll find Jake. We'll bring him home to you and the baby," she vowed, a fierce determination in her eyes. As pain and drugs dragged me back into unconsciousness, her promise was the lifeline I clung to. Jake had to come back to us. He just had to. Waking up to see Jake by my side felt like a miracle. I'd been teetering on the edge of despair, the world seeming dark and hopeless. But there he was, the love of my life, alive and right in front of me. I couldn't help the tears that started streaming down my face, each one a mix of relief, joy, and a touch of residual fear. Jake held my hand, his eyes filled with a storm of emotions. "Hey, Em," he said, his voice cracking a bit. "I'm so sorry for all this mess. My mom, she did something unforgivable." I was still trying to wrap my head around everything. "Your mom, she told me you were gone. Why would she do that?" He sighed heavily, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "She found out about the baby and panicked. Thought if you believed I was dead, you'd, I don't know, have gotten rid of the baby." The bitterness of the betrayal stung. To think that someone could go to such lengths to control our lives was unimaginable. But why? How could she think that was okay? Jake shook his head, his expression hardening. "She thought she was protecting me, our family name. But there's no excuse. I came back as soon as I found out what she'd done. And then I heard about the accident. As I got stronger, Jake was my constant, my rock. And when I was finally discharged, we knew we had to confront his parents, to bring everything into the open." Driving to his parents' house, the tension in the car was palpable. Jake gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw set. I held onto his other hand, seeking to give him some semblance of comfort. When we arrived, his mother's face was a picture of fear and guilt. Jake didn't waste any time. "Dad, we need to talk. It's about Mom and what she's done." His father, a stern man who always seemed unshakable, listened in disbelief as Jake laid everything out. The lies about his death, the manipulation, the accident that nearly took my life and our child's. His mother sat there, a shadow of herself, as Jake's words washed over her. When Jake finished, the silence was deafening. His father finally spoke, his voice low but filled with a fury I'd never seen from him before. "You did this? You risked our son's happiness, Emily's life, for what? Your pride?" She didn't answer, just sat there, sobbing quietly into her hands. It was clear she had realized the magnitude of her actions, but too late. Jake's dad turned to her, his decision firm. "You need to leave. I can't look at you, knowing what you've done. You tried to destroy our family from the inside. I won't have it." After everything we'd been through, the wedding felt like a breath of fresh air, a start to something new and beautiful. Jake and I decided on a small ceremony. It wasn't about the flash or the numbers, it was about us, our love, and the family we were building. Standing there, exchanging vows with Jake, my heart was so full it felt like it might burst. I was a few months along by then, my belly proudly carrying our future as I wore a simple yet stunning dress that flowed gently over my curves. Jake looked at me with so much love and admiration, it made every past hurt fade away. "I love you more than I can say, Em. You, Lily, and our little guy on the way," he whispered, so only I could hear, his hand briefly touching my belly. "We're a team now, a family." His words were a soothing balm, healing old wounds. And as we turned to face our small gathering of friends and family, I saw only happiness and support reflected back at us. Jake's dad was there, a testament to the bridges we were rebuilding. Except one face was missing, Jake's mom. She had moved away, unable to reconcile with the reality of our love and the family we were creating. Jake had tried, one last time, to bridge the gap, to explain our love and commitment to each other, but it was a bridge too far for her. And so, we moved forward, just the four of us. The day our son was born was one of pure joy. Jake was by my side the entire time, holding my hand, his eyes never leaving mine except to check on our baby's progress. When our son was finally placed in my arms, the emotion in the room was palpable. Jake leaned over, kissing my forehead, then our son's. "Hey there, little man. Welcome to the family." Seeing him hold our son, then watching as Lily cautiously approached, curious and a bit shy, to meet her brother, was a picture I'd carry in my heart forever. Our family felt complete. I've always been the type to enjoy my own company. Name's Kimberly, 30, and teaching physics at a local college. Family, marriage, all that jazz? Not really on my radar. Got this nice little place all to myself, a legacy from my granddad. It's my slice of peace in this loud world. So, there I was, hitting the pavement in the park for my morning run, when this scene unfolds right in front of me. A guy, not watching where he's going, takes a spectacular dive and his phone goes flying. The thing hits the ground and, bam, it's a goner. Shattered screen, bits everywhere, the whole 9 yards. He's cussing up a storm, face all twisted in frustration. Clearly, the phone's the least of his worries. Looks like he's about to tear his hair out. Great, just great. This is all I needed today. He groans, staring at the remains of his phone like it personally offended him. I slow down, kinda hovering. Not sure why. Maybe it's the look of utter defeat on his face. "You need to borrow a phone?" I ask, keeping it casual. He looks up, kinda surprised someone's talking to him. "Yeah, that'd be great, actually. Need to call my folks, tell them I botched up something important." I unhook my phone from my armband and hand it over. Don't sweat it. Just make it quick, yeah? Sure, thanks a ton, he says, and he's on the phone in a heartbeat, pacing a small circle as he talks. His voice is all polite now, a total switch from the cursing fit seconds ago. Listen, I've had a bit of a mishap. He's glancing at me, a silent plea for a bit more time. I nod, letting him know it's alright. Finishing up, he hands back my phone with a sheepish look. Thanks. I owe you one. I'm Jack, by the way. Kimberly, and forget about it. Just try not to smash it next time, yeah? I say, half joking. He chuckles, running a hand through his hair. Deal. I'll make it up to you. Coffee, sometime? I raise an eyebrow. You planning on throwing the coffee at the ground too? He laughs, a genuine, hearty sound. Promise I'm less clumsy with coffee cups. What do you say? I consider it for a moment. Not usually my thing, chatting up strangers, but something about this feels different. Alright, Jack. Coffee. But if you're late, I'm leaving. I say with a smirk. That coffee with Jack? It turned out to be the first of many. Something about him made me toss my stranger danger manual out the window. He was easy to talk to, with a laugh that made you want to join in, even if the joke was lame. We found this little hole-in-the-wall cafe, the kind where the coffee's strong enough to put hair on your chest and the owner knows everyone by name. We became regulars, our conversation stretching from physics to philosophy to the downright ridiculous. So, you're telling me, if you could, you'd teach physics to cats? Jack asked me one day, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. I took a sip of my coffee, playing along. Absolutely. Imagine the breakthroughs. Schrodinger's cat would have a whole new meaning. He laughed, shaking his head. You're nuts. You know that, right? Takes one to know one. I shot back, smiling. Things with Jack just clicked. It wasn't long before our coffee dates turned into dinner dates, movie nights, and lazy Sundays spent doing nothing together. It was easy, comfortable, and frighteningly quick. One evening, as we were closing down the cafe with our lingering goodbye, Jack turned serious, something I'd come to learn meant he had something important on his mind. Kimberly, he started, hesitating a bit. I've been thinking. We're great together, aren't we? I nodded, curious about where this was leading. Well, I was wondering. What do you think about making this a forever thing? My heart skipped. Forever thing? You mean, like marriage? Yeah, marriage, he confirmed, his voice firm but his eyes searching mine for any sign of hesitation. I paused, not because I doubted my feelings, but because the gravity of the decision weighed on me. Yet, looking into his hopeful eyes, I found my answer. Yes, Jack. Let's do it. Let's get married. The whirlwind that was our engagement sped by, and before I knew it, wedding bells were practically ringing in my ears. But, there was this one little hiccup, before we could say our I dos. Jack's folks wanted to meet me. No biggie, right? Wrong. The meet and greet was at their place, which was fancy enough to make you think twice about where you sat. They were polite, but had this way of looking at you like they were trying to read the fine print on your soul. So, Kimberly, his dad starts, voice smooth like he's practiced this speech a few times. Jack tells us you're a teacher. Physics, was it? Yeah, that's right. I reply, keeping my tone friendly but guarded. And you live in that lovely little house by the park? Quite the inheritance. His mom chimes in, her eyes sharp, trying to pin me down. I just nod, sensing where this is heading but not wanting to jump the gun. It's just that our Jack is quite the successful businessman, you know. We're just a tad concerned, no offense, dear, that some might be more interested in his financial stability, his dad says, dancing around the real accusation. I couldn't help but laugh, the absurdity of it all bubbling up. Trust me, I've got my own, thanks. Not here for a free ride. Their faces tighten, not expecting my blunt honesty, or maybe they did, and it was all part of the test. Well, in that case, his mom says, pulling out this document from nowhere, we'd feel more at ease if you two considered a prenuptial agreement. Sure, I shrugged, taking the paper. Makes sense to me. I like knowing where I stand. Plus, my house isn't up for grabs. Their surprise was almost worth the awkward tension. I guess they weren't used to straightforward answers. Jack seemed relieved, squeezing my hand under the table like he was saying, "Thanks for not bolting." So, we signed their precious prenup, sealing the deal that what's mine is mine and what's his is his. Fair's fair, but the taste it left in my mouth was sour. Made me wonder what kind of family I was marrying into. Living with Jack in my granddad's house started off as a dream. We'd laugh over burnt toast, dance in the living room to no music, and make plans for every inch of the garden. But, like a storm rolling in slow, things got cloudy, then downright stormy. And wouldn't you know it, the storm had a name: Jack's parents. These two could give lessons in arrogance. From day one, it was like I signed up for a third and fourth roommate who had a key but never heard of rent. They'd swan into our place like it was a diner, feet up, waiting for the special of the day. And when they hinted they wanted to go on this fancy cruise but their wallets were too thin, they looked at me like I was the bank. The day I told them no, you'd think I'd declared war. They threw a fit, calling me stingy, saying I hoarded my cash like some dragon sitting on gold. Word gets around, and soon Jack's asking why I'm not more generous with his folks. Generous? Jack, they practically live off us as it is. I snapped back one night, after his parents had left our sofa and our fridge emptier than promises. Their family, Kim. We're supposed to help out, he argued, missing the point by a mile. Helping's one thing. Being taken for a ride's another. Your folks think my money's theirs to spend. That's not happening. Jack went all quiet then, the kind of silence that's louder than shouting. His parents did the same but in their way, by suddenly vanishing. No drop-bys, no calls, nothing. They were offended because I wouldn't fund their holiday spree. Called me greedy behind my back, said I was living too tight, all because I wouldn't open up my granddad's safe to splurge on them. Ah, the safe. That hulking piece of metal was more than a place to stash away a few valuable bits and bobs, it was a slice of history, a connection to my granddad. But to them? Just a vault they hadn't cracked. The calm month without Jack's folks was like the quiet before the storm. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day you don't expect anything out of the ordinary. I was late coming home from work, bogged down with papers and the remnants of a headache that wouldn't quit. Walking in, I found Jack's parents parked on our sofa, remote in hand, flipping through channels like they owned the place. Evening, I managed, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "Oh, there she is. We were wondering if you'd join us tonight," his mom said, without looking away from the TV. I glanced at Jack, hoping for some backup, but he was engrossed in something on his laptop. Sighing, I headed to the kitchen, only to find they'd helped themselves to leftovers I was planning to make into dinner. That was it. I was done playing nice. "Okay, listen up," I said, striding back into the living room. "This is not a hotel, and I am not the maid." Jack looked up, startled, while his parents finally paused their channel surfing. "What's gotten into you?" his dad asked, frowning. "I'm tired," I shot back. "Tired of coming home to find you two camped out here, eating my food, and treating this place like it's yours." "It's not." The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop, or in this case, the tick of the clock, marking the moment everything changed. His mom stood, smoothing her skirt. "Well, I never. Here we thought we were family, but clearly, we were mistaken." "That's not what I'm saying, and you know it. I'm just asking for some respect, some space." I tried to explain, but the look on her face told me she wasn't buying it. Jack's dad chimed in, his voice cold. "Seems like someone's true colors are showing. We just wanted to be close to our son, but apparently, that's too much for you." I looked at Jack, searching for some sign of support, but he was torn, caught between us and them. "Maybe it's best if we leave," his mom said, her voice laced with hurt I wasn't sure was entirely genuine. "Maybe that is best," I agreed, more to myself than anyone else. They left, and with them, the false pretense of one big happy family. Jack and I stood in the silent aftermath, the rift between us wider than ever. The breaking point hit like a wrecking ball. Jack had always been a bit of a mama's boy, but I never figured it would get this bad. His folks? They had their hooks in deep, and Jack danced to every tune they played. It wouldn't have been so bad if it stopped there, but no, Jack started treating me like I was part of the staff in my own house. "Hey, can you whip up something nice for dinner?" "I'm starving," Jack would say, dropping his bag by the door like he owned the place. "Jack, I've been on my feet all day, teaching and grading. How about you cook tonight?" I'd reply, trying not to let my irritation bubble over. But instead of understanding, he'd huff, puff, and make it seem like I was the one being unreasonable. And let's not even start on the Fridays he'd roll in past midnight, reeking of booze, with that "what's the big deal" look plastered on his face. One evening, I'd had enough. "We need to talk, Jack. This isn't working." He just stood there, swaying slightly, with that clueless look of his. "What's not working?" "Us, Jack. Us. Your parents treat this place like a free hotel, you treat me like I'm here to serve, and I'm tired. All the time tired." He could have said a lot of things then. Could have apologized, could have promised to change. But no, he got all defensive, as if I was attacking him out of the blue. "That's not fair, Kim. You knew what my family was like," he shot back. "Yeah, and I thought I was marrying you, not signing up to be the family doormat," I snapped. That was the moment. The moment when the last thread snapped. We looked at each other, really looked, and saw the chasm between us. Too wide to bridge, too deep to fill. I think we should get a divorce," I said, the words tasting bitter. Jack's reaction was a mixture of shock and relief. It was clear this had been a long time coming for both of us. But when he told his folks, the glee in their voices was something else. "We always knew she wasn't right for you, son. Good riddance, and thank heavens for that prenup," his mom had chirped over speakerphone, her voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. Jack packed his bags that night, his movements mechanical. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tearful plea for reconsideration. Just the soft zip of a suitcase and the click of a door. Life's funny, you know? Just when you think you've hit rock bottom, fate throws you a curveball. For me, that curveball was a lottery ticket, a last-minute buy on a whim because, hey, why not? My life was already a mess, might as well throw a couple of bucks at a dream. The morning I found out I won, it was like any other, except my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I thought it was a mistake, a practical joke maybe. But no, there it was, my ticket, my numbers, staring back at me from the screen, winners through and through. So there I was, staring at the lottery ticket in my hand, the kind of stunned where you can't decide if you want to laugh or cry. $3 million. It felt like a joke, considering the mess my life was at that moment. Divorce papers not yet signed, and my soon-to-be ex and his folks were nothing but a headache I couldn't shake. The universe must have a sense of humor, because the next thing I know, Jack's car pulls up. Him and his folks, all smiles and fake warmth, come barging into my place like it's some family reunion. "Kim, darling, we heard the news. What a blessing." His mom starts, laying it on thick. "Let's put all this unpleasantness behind us, We're family." Jack chimes in, all hopeful. "Yeah, babe, think about it. We can start fresh, really make a go of it this time." I couldn't help it, I laughed. Not the happy kind, but the kind that's sharp around the edges. "Start fresh? With what, your folks running the show?" "No thanks. I'm good." Then Jack, oh Jack, he gets this look, like he's been wronged, and says, "Come on, Kim. That's cold. You know I deserve half of that money. It's only fair." Fair? Let's talk about fair, Jack. You and your parents treating me and my place like some kind of free-for-all, and now you want half of my win? Not happening. His face went all kinds of red, anger, embarrassment, take your pick. His parents, too, looked like they'd swallowed lemons, all puckered and sour. According to our prenup, that money is mine. All mine. You got that? I said, holding his gaze, feeling a kind of power I hadn't felt in a long time. He sputtered, looking to his folks for backup, but I wasn't done. And just so we're clear, this ticket, I waved it in the air, before sliding it into my safe, is staying right here, under reliable protection. Their eyes, oh man, their eyes were like cartoon characters, almost popping out of their heads. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Jack tried to argue more, but I cut him off. No, Jack. It's over. This ticket is my ticket out of this mess. Our mess. And you're not getting a dime. They left after that, not much else they could say. The door clicking shut behind them sounded like the end of an era. My era of playing the good wife, the understanding partner. Then I rang up my sister, spilling the beans about my sudden windfall. We spent hours on the phone, dreaming big, trips abroad, fancy cars, you name it. The kind of chat that leaves your cheeks aching from smiling too much. And guess what? I added, as our call was winding down. Jack's already got his eyes on the prize, acting like we're suddenly best buddies again. My sister cackled on the other end. You'd better hide that ticket somewhere Fort Knox couldn't crack, especially from those vultures. I laughed. Oh, please, I've got it all under control. It's tucked away nice and safe. Fast forward a week, and I'm jetting off to a teaching conference, my mind a whirlwind of lectures and potential networking. Not once did I suspect what was brewing back home. Coming back to an empty space where my granddad's hefty safe used to sit, you'd think I'd freak out. But no, I just burst out laughing. Knowing Jack and his folks, I had a hunch about who the culprits were. Sure enough, as the sun dipped and the evening rolled in, Jack's frantic voice came blaring through my phone. Kim, you need to fix this now, he was practically shrieking. Fix what, Jack? The fact that you and your parents are a bunch of Keystone cops? I couldn't help the snark. It's not funny. We're at the police station. They think we tried to steal the lottery ticket. His voice was a mix of panic and disbelief. The ticket. Oh, that precious piece of paper. Except, the real kicker? The one in the safe was a decoy, a copy I'd made just for kicks. The real deal was with me, secure in my purse. The image of them, huddled around my granddad's old safe, visions of dollar signs in their eyes, only to find a worthless piece of paper, was too good. I howled with laughter, the sound echoing off my empty walls. You mean to tell me you stole my safe for a fake ticket? I managed between fits of laughter. There was silence, then a muffled curse. You can't do this to us, Kim. It's not right. Right? Jack, the moment you decided to break into my house and steal my stuff, you threw right out the window. Enjoy explaining that to the cops. The call ended with a click, and I spent the rest of the evening laughing, the sound bitter but liberating. Imagining their faces, the moment they realized they'd been played, was a balm to the months of turmoil they'd put me through. The next day, I headed to the police station to give my statement. The look on Jack and his folks' faces when I walked in was priceless. They looked like they'd seen a ghost, a mix of guilt and sheer panic. Kim, thank God you're here. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding, Jack blurted out, his eyes darting around, looking for an ally in me. I just stared at him, letting the silence hang heavy for a moment. A misunderstanding? Is that what we're calling breaking and entering these days? His parents started in on their spiel, tripping over their words, trying to paint themselves as victims of circumstance. It would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. Listen, I only came here to make things right, I said, cutting through their babble. Jack perked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. So, you'll help us? I nodded, reaching into my bag. Yes, by giving this to the officers. I pulled out the real lottery ticket, the legitimate claim to my winnings, and handed it over to the police officer standing by. Jack and his parents gasped, their faces going from hopeful to horrified in a split second. That's the real ticket. The one you all were so desperate to steal was a fake. A decoy, I stated, my voice steady and clear. The officer took the ticket, looking between it and me. This will certainly help clear things up, he said, noting down something in his notebook. But why? Why would you trick us like that? Jack's mom wailed, looking every bit the part of a wronged party. Why? Maybe because breaking into someone's house and stealing is wrong. You brought this on yourselves, I retorted, my patience wearing thin. Jack stood there, mouth agape, as the realization sank in. So, what now? Are we going to jail? That's not for me to decide, I said, turning to leave. But maybe next time, you'll think twice before betraying someone who trusted you. After the whole debacle with the fake lottery ticket and the stolen safe, things moved pretty quickly. The cops had enough to open a criminal case against Jack and his folks for breaking and entering, not to mention the attempted theft. It was a mess, but a part of me felt vindicated seeing them finally face some consequences for their actions. The divorce papers came through not long after. Signing them felt like lifting a massive weight off my shoulders. It was official, I was free from Jack and all the drama that came with him. And the best part? I got my granddad's safe back. It was a little worse for wear after its adventure, but having it back in my house felt like getting a piece of my soul returned. I had the winning ticket cashed, the money securely tucked away, and a whole lot of options in front of me. But first, I needed to celebrate this fresh start, this new beginning I fought hard for. I called up my sister, the first person who rode this crazy train with me from the get-go. Hey, sis, how about a celebratory dinner? On me, of course, I offered, feeling lighter than I had in months. You kidding? I wouldn't miss it for the world. You deserve this, Kim, she replied, her voice bubbling with excitement. That evening, sitting in a cozy corner of our favorite restaurant, we toasted to new beginnings and the future. So, what's the first thing you're gonna do with your winnings? My sister asked, sipping on her wine. I thought about it for a moment. First, a vacation. Somewhere far, with lots of sun and no memories of the past few months. Then, I don't know, maybe start a charity, or invest in something meaningful. Something that makes a difference, you know? She nodded, her eyes sparkling. That sounds just like you, Kim. Always thinking of others. After dinner, walking back to my car, my sister looped her arm through mine. You know, I'm really proud of you, Kim. You handled everything with such grace. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached deep into my soul. Thanks, sis. Couldn't have done it without you. As I drove home, the streets bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights, I felt a sense of peace. The kind of peace that comes from closing a long, turbulent chapter of your life and stepping into a blank page, ready to start anew. I had plans to make, dreams to chase, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what the future held. Sure, the road ahead might have its share of bumps and turns, but I was ready. Ready to face them head on, with my head held high and my heart open to whatever comes next.